The joke slipped out of my mouth before I could stop it, carried by the kind of nervous laughter that reveals more truth than humor. It was a bright afternoon, sunlight spilling through the windows of the small community library where I volunteered on weekends, and she stood there, Mira, with that tired smile that didn't match the spark in her eyes. I didn't know then just how close to the edge she was, how one more disappointment could have pushed her life in a very different direction. I only knew that when she sighed and rubbed her temples, something inside me ached in a way I hadn't expected. So when I joked, "Do you want to move in with me?" and she gave a soft, exhausted chuckle, I thought that would be the end of it. But the next day, the same sunlight that had felt warm now felt blinding when she appeared at my door with trembling hands, whispering, "Is your offer still good?" And in that moment, I realized the joke I made was the lifeline she had been desperately trying to grasp. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the way small gestures can save someone, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness to help these stories reach more hearts. From the outside, my life looked steady enough. My name is Rowan Hale, a 29-year-old graphic designer who kept busy enough to stay distracted but not fulfilled. My apartment was modest, a warm, sunlit space above a bakery that always smelled like freshly baked bread. I didn't have many visitors, and even fewer people who stayed long enough to know me deeply. But Mira had been different from the start. I first noticed her months earlier at the library, flipping quietly through job listings, her shoulders always stiff, her expression trying and failing to hide deep worry. She was 27, working part-time at a local cafe, carrying herself with a gentleness that constantly collided with the world's rough edges. Her black hair was tied back in a simple braid most days, and her hands were always restless, tapping books, scribbling notes, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Yet she always smiled. It was the kind of smile that didn't ask for pity, just a little space to breathe. When she talked, her voice carried warmth mixed with the unmistakable tremble of someone trying not to fall apart. That day she stood at my apartment door, her backpack slung too heavily over her shoulder, eyes slightly red. I stepped aside without asking anything. Some things don't need questions, some moments only require choosing compassion over curiosity. She walked in quietly, looked around my small living room, and exhaled as if letting go of something heavy she had carried for far too long. Over the next few days, I began understanding why my joke had become her last thread of hope. Her job hours had been cut, her landlord had sold the building without warning, and she had no nearby family or savings to fall back on. She slept lightly, waking up at the smallest sounds, as if expecting someone to take this temporary safety away. The first time she fell into a deep, peaceful sleep on my couch, basked in afternoon sunlight, it struck me how much a person could endure quietly until they finally found a place where they felt even slightly safe. I didn't try to fix her problems. I simply gave her space to breathe. And in her stillness, I began to understand just how deeply loneliness had seeped into her life, and mine. Days slowly turned into a routine. Mornings were filled with the sounds of cooking, the soft hiss of the kettle, and the comfortable silence of two people sharing a kitchen. Mira was always trying to help, washing dishes, organizing shelves, or folding laundry too neatly for someone who claimed to be messy. She would hum while she worked, little melodies that lingered like sunlight on the walls. But despite her efforts, I could see the heavy shadow of insecurity on her face every time she asked, "Are you sure I'm not intruding?" I would smile and shake my head. She wasn't intruding. She was filling a quiet space I hadn't realized had grown so empty. One afternoon, the sun was high, warming the windows in golden hues, and Mira sat across from me with a pile of job applications. Her hands shook slightly. She had been rejected twice that morning, and although she tried to hide it, the disappointment was etched deeply into her eyes. I watched her bite her lip, struggling to stay optimistic, and something inside me twisted painfully. She whispered, almost too softly, "I'm trying, Rowan. I'm really trying." I wanted to reach across the table and hold her hand, to erase the guilt she felt for circumstances that weren't her fault. But all I said was, "I know." And in that simple reply, she seemed to find an anchor. The turning point came 3 weeks later. It was a breezy day, sunlight flickering through the curtains as birds chirped outside. Mira came home early from a cafe interview. I saw her standing just inside the doorway, frozen, fingers gripping the doorknob. Her breathing was uneven, and when I approached, she whispered, "They didn't even let me finish, they said they found someone else last minute." Her voice cracked. She sank to the floor, arms wrapped around herself, and for the first time since she came into my life, she cried openly, shoulders trembling, tears falling freely, her breath unsteady. I knelt beside her, unsure of what to say but knowing she needed the silence to break. She leaned into me, trembling, and I wrapped my arms around her gently. There, in the golden light of a late afternoon, she let out weeks, maybe years, of bottled-up fear. She apologized over and over, and I kept telling her she had nothing to apologize for. Not her struggle, not her tears, not her presence in my life. If anything, I realized then how much she had changed me simply by being here. For the first time in years, my home felt alive. Over time, her resilience began shining again. She found a small job at an art supply shop where the owner admired her attentiveness and calm nature. She came home with stories about customers, small pleasant interactions, and moments when she felt appreciated. Her smile became brighter, her laughter more effortless. She started rearranging my apartment, adding little potted plants, placing colorful notes on the fridge, and bringing home inexpensive but thoughtful decorations that made the space feel warmer than ever before. I didn't stop her. I loved watching her slowly claim the place as her own. But with every improvement she made, every step she took forward, a strange fear lingered in my chest, fear that once she got back on her feet fully, she might leave. I never said it aloud, but the thought rooted itself deeper with every passing day. Then one bright morning, sunlight illuminating her face as she prepared breakfast, she looked at me with a seriousness I hadn't seen in months. She placed a small ceramic mug on the table and said softly, "I've been meaning to talk to you about finding a new place." My heart thudded painfully, but I kept my expression neutral. "Of course," I said. "Whenever you're ready." She nodded, then paused. Her fingers traced circles on the mug's handle. "I just didn't want you to think I was taking advantage. You've done so much for me." I shook my head. "You don't owe me anything." But she looked unconvinced. For a moment, silence settled between us, filled with unspoken thoughts. Then she whispered, "I don't want to leave unless you want me to." The air shifted. In that moment, I realized something simple but profound. She wasn't just someone I had helped. She was someone who had become part of my everyday life in a way I didn't want to lose. She had turned a quiet apartment into a place filled with warmth, laughter, and gentle chaos. And I knew, deeply and undeniably, that I didn't want her to go anywhere. I took a breath and spoke carefully. "The joke I made that day, maybe it wasn't a joke." "Not really." Her eyes widened slightly, hope flickering through them like sunlight on water. Then she smiled, a real smile, steady and warm. "Then I guess I'm already home." Life didn't magically become perfect after that, but it became fuller. We grew together in small ways. We cooked side by side, explored weekend markets, celebrated her first paycheck with cheap cupcakes, and shared long conversations over afternoon tea as sunlight danced across the room. Our days blended into a quiet, beautiful rhythm.